All right, guys. So, welcome to the actual first video, the first true video, I should say, of the channel. If you guys don't know who I am already, my name is Dylan, or the Pissed Off Ohioan. Welcome. Please like and subscribe. Share it around with people that you know that would enjoy this. But let's go ahead and talk about the 2025 season for the Cleveland Browns. Man, what have I done to deserve being a fan of this organization? And this is just such a like it's like an abusive relationship. I just cannot stop just being sucked back in after how many years I lived through the 0-16 year. I lived through the ups and downs of the Baker Mayfield stuff. I lived through the Johnny Manziel and Brian Hoyer and all those guys. That was the quarterback of the late 2000s of the Browns quarterbacks into the early 2010s. But let's take a look at what's in the present here for the Browns. So just to give you guys a little bit of an overview here, the first part of the video will be me having a little bit of a rant. And then the second part will be me going through game by game and giving you my prediction of what will happen. So, of course, we can't even talk about the schedule yet before we have to talk about the quarterback room. So I know everyone's talking about Shedeur Sanders. Right now, this is being recording a few days before the second game of the preseason against the Eagles. Shedeur Sanders actually had a really good game the first week. Everyone has been talking about it. I know right now he looks like he's going to be starting the second week. That very well could change. Dylan Gabriel might be able to jump him for that starting position in the second week, I should say. But honestly, I really think Dylan Gabriel should start. I think we got a taste of what Shedeur Sanders could do. Now we need a taste of what Dylan Gabriel could do. And then maybe Shedeur Sanders can take over a few possessions and then give the rest to Tyler Huntley. But we all know that Joe Flacco's not going to be playing in this game. Kenny Pickett probably won't play in this game. He might still be injured. I don't really know. I haven't really had an update on that. But we'll see. Right now, it's still early in the week. Right now, let's just talk about what I think is going to happen. I really think that this is Joe Flacco's job. I think with the injury to Kenny Pickett, I think Joe Flacco has had this job in the bag for a number of weeks now, ever since Kenny Pickett tried to impress everybody. I don't know why, but he tried to impress everybody and then ended up injuring his hamstring running. Great job, buddy. But that's just the Browns, and, the whole Steelers saying the Browns is the Browns, and then we kick your ass in 2020, but, let's just save that for the Steelers games that are on the schedule. But anyways, right now I think Joe Flacco has the start for week 1. I don't really see anyone else really denying that unless you're a Shedeur Sanders stan, which I don't really want. I'm not a Shedeur Sanders stan. I didn't even want him to be taken in the first round by the Browns. I thought that they might trade up and get him in the first round. Well, they ended up waiting like 3 extra rounds to end up taking him. So, which was great for the Browns. Like, we got another quarterback out of it. And I know everyone's talking about how the Browns have 6 quarterbacks on their roster if you include Deshaun Watson. I don't include Deshaun Watson. I think Deshaun Watson's time in Cleveland is done. If he's not going to ever start again unless something catastrophic happens, like with the RG3 and all the the 4 quarterbacks that got injured in Robert Griffin III's year when he started for the Browns. But barring any of that, he's not going to play this year. He ruptured Achilles over the summer. Not even over the summer. It was a few months. I think it was a month or two after the season actually ended. So in the winter, I think he tore it again, I believe. I definitely know he tore it. I just don't remember exactly what time he tore it at. But anyways, Deshaun Watson's not going to play. He's on IR. He'll be gone for the rest of the year, which I think is actually really good. I think that gives the Browns an opportunity to see what else they have at quarterback. And that's exactly what they did. They brought in 4 extra guys. And that's not including Tyler Huntley right now. We'll talk about him in a second. But right now it's Joe Flacco. What I think that let's go through the standings. It will be Joe Flacco starting at week 1. Kenny Pickett will probably be the backup. For at least this is week 1 right now. So Kenny Pickett will probably be the backup. Shedeur Sanders and then Dylan Gabriel. Or no, probably Dylan Gabriel because the Browns are stubborn like that, and because they drafted Dylan Gabriel before Shedeur Sanders, they're probably going to want to put him over in the depth chart. As much as it makes people mad, Shedeur Sanders will probably be the 4th one on the depth chart. Won't be on the practice squad or anything. I think if anyone's going to be put in the practice squad, it's going to be Kenny Pickett. And if he clears waivers, he's right there, and he doesn't really need to be. It'll be like a Joe Flacco in 2023 type thing. You put him on the practice squad, and then he plays. So it's not going to be a really big deal there. Unless another team gets desperate, then in that case, I think that is honestly kind of better for the Browns. See what your rookies have if and when Joe Flacco does pull a Joe Flacco and has those 3 interception type games. Maybe you see what your rookies have, but we'll get to that in my predictions. So of course you take Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders in the draft in the 3rd round for Dylan Gabriel, and then the 5th round for Shedeur Sanders. But that's what's normally that's what's getting all of the attention right now. But why don't we look back on what happened in the draft? So the Browns had the number 2 overall pick. They ended up trading it to Jacksonville, and Jacksonville ends up taking Travis Hunter, which I thought was kind of interesting. Right now, I kind of get it. I believe they only went down, I think, 2 spots. Because they went from I think they went down 3. Because they went from 2 to 5. So 3 spots. They went down 3 spots. And they took Mason Graham, which was a great addition to this defensive line that just released Dalvin Tomlinson. You need to get younger on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Myles Garrett's going to be Myles Garrett for however long he wants to be, honestly. And then you got to have someone respectable on the other side. But right up the middle is Mason Graham, and it's going to be great. I know a lot of people, he's not getting a lot of attention in training camp right now, but honestly, as an Ohio State fan, that guy wreaked havoc every single year he played against Ohio State when he was at Michigan. Like, there was no game where I wasn't like, oh my God, Mason Graham, why do you have to be on Michigan right now? Especially last year when he just wrecked Ohio State's offense single-handedly, basically. But let's just not talk about that. I'll save that for the Ohio State portion of the 2025 previews. But yeah, you pass on Travis Hunter. You let the Jaguars take him, which honestly wasn't a bad thing. Travis Hunter doesn't have to come up to Ohio. He can stay in Florida, where he actually is from. Of course, committed to Florida State. Then Dion went to Jackson State, so he went there, and then went up to Colorado, which I know is a big change for him, but I don't really think it really affected him that much. But at least for Travis Hunter, he stays somewhat close to home in his home state of Florida. I think he does great things there. And where maybe he doesn't, and the Browns actually win this trade, and Travis Hunter doesn't become the Travis Hunter that he was in college, and he ends up becoming like a slot guy on either a wide receiver position or a corner position. And he doesn't play both sides, and he's not the unicorn we all think he is. I was just under the opinion during the draft that if you have the unicorn there, you take the unicorn. I was also a big fan of Abdul Carter. I think Abdul Carter next to Myles Garrett would have been great. The Browns, of course, did not see it that way. The Giants end up picking him up at, I think, pick 3 or 4. I think it was 3. I think the Giants were 3rd because the Giants beat the Browns. Yeah, they were 3rd, so Abdul Carter goes at 3. Mason Graham falls to the Browns at number 5, which is a great deal because now Mason Graham doesn't have to deal with being the number 1 guy on the line like he was at Michigan, where he had to deal with all the double teams. Now he can go one-on-one, and he's got to pick up some weight. He's not going to be the Mason Graham that he was his senior year in his first year. He's not going to make that type of jump in the NFL. There's going to be almost like a culture shock, I guess you could almost call it. There's going to be that learning curve that he's going to have in the NFL. That stuff that he did use in college. It's not going to work in the NFL because these are NFL guys. These are not college guys. Anyways, This it's huge for Mason Graham because now he doesn't have to worry about the double teams. That's going to be at Miles, and then when Miles, if Mason Graham is having a great day, they have to draw attention to Mason Graham. Then that leaves Miles with the door open, which is a great thing for the Browns. You got to have a guy across either directly on the other side of Miles, or you got to have somebody that the offensive line has to pay attention to that's not Myles Garrett in order for Myles Garrett to be who he is, and otherwise teams are just going to send triple teams at Myles Garrett. And I know Myles Garrett, you've seen all the clips where he is like he's beating the triple teams and getting the quarterback still, but he's not going to do that as consistently as he would if they were always just one-on-ones. And it's just not going to happen as consistently as if the line's just shifting over to Myles Garrett every play. He's still going to get his numbers, but it's not going to be nearly as much as you really want it to be. Don't believe me? Go ask TJ Watt how having an elite defensive line helps him with his sack numbers, which I feel like is a little inflated. TJ Watt has not been the same player that he was in the past few years. Whether Steelers fans want to like it or not, he's not a better player than Myles Garrett is right now. He was in the 2021-2022, but when Myles won Defensive Player of the Year, and last year, Myles Garrett has surpassed TJ Watt, whether Steelers fans want to really admit it or not. But that's it for Mason Graham. Of course, what's now really looking like the steal of the draft, at least on the Browns side, is Carson Schlesinger, the linebacker out of UCLA, I believe. Maybe I could be wrong on that, but of course we picked him in the first pick of the second round, and he right now looks like a great replacement for JOK, which unfortunately looks like more and more that it's going to be a career-ending injury. Of course, he's going to be out for the rest of this season. Really sucked when he went down. As soon as he went down, I immediately realized it was a neck injury, and he's probably not going to be there for the rest of that season, and it didn't even come across my mind that he would be out for this season too. But that's the reality that we live in, and unfortunately for him, he might have his career cut short. If not, he's probably not going to be the same player that he was before the injury, which is really unfortunate for the Browns. The fact that we could not get a Carson Schlesinger and JOK linebacking room, it really sucks. But I believe that Carson Schlesinger could fill that position very well. That could be a seamless transition. It might be a little bit of a learning curve like it was for JOK in his first year. But maybe not. Maybe he comes out and it's basically like nothing ever left. That the linebacker basically switched races. Like, I just don't think that... I don't think that that's going to happen. I think it's more likely that Schlesinger has that little bit of a learning curve, and the Browns do kind of struggle in the linebacking room, especially with Jordan Hicks, of course, retiring a few weeks ago. And all that. We'll get to the defense here in a second. But you take Carson Schlesinger, then you take Quinson Judkins, which, of course, right now he is dealing with legal issues. So, and we haven't gotten a report on that as the recording of this video. By the time you see this, maybe that changes. Maybe the charges get dropped, or they actually go to court, and you get the actual suspension that he's probably going to be. He's probably going to be out for a significant amount of time because the NFL does not like the domestic issues at all, which I don't blame them. That's great. We should be able to cut down that, and also the speeding stuff. Sugar Sanders, don't be doing that. Myles, you should teach him. You have an experience with speeding. You should be teaching him don't speed. But that's neither here nor there. Then you take Harold Fainin out of Bowling Green. That he literally went to college an hour away from what I went to school in high school. Loved him as a prospect. I remember doing mock drafts, and people I follow were always high on Harold Fainin, so the fact that the Browns actually got him is great, and I think in training camp that he's actually standing out. He'll be a great backup for David Njoku, and maybe even a replacement for David Njoku if David Njoku goes down with an injury or he leaves. or when he eventually retires, if he stays in Cleveland for the rest of his career. I think Harold Faden can slip right into that spot and be right there once he develops. Then you take Dylan Gabriel, and I was not a fan of this pick whatsoever. I thought the Browns, I was really, honestly, during the draft, I was extremely annoyed that we didn't take Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. I wanted one. I was not team trade down and get a pick. In hindsight, it does look like a good idea. If the Jaguars do have another failure of a season and the Browns to get not one but maybe 2 top 5 picks, I think the Browns win that trade, especially if they're going to go after a quarterback next year. But we'll see about that. I thought the Browns honestly crushed it up until this point right here. You can argue whether Quinshon Judkins and his whole thing right now is a little bit of a failure. I think once Quinshon Judkins gets into the Browns camp and gets the system, he will be a good running back to have, especially with the departure of Nick Chubb, which really, really sucks for especially the fan base. I know every single Browns fan wanted Nick Chubb back, and the fact that he's in Houston, the team that we not only traded Deshaun Watson, or we traded to get to Deshaun Watson, and then they turn around with my all-time favorite Ohio State quarterback C.J. Stroud and destroy the Browns in their last postseason run. Really, really hurts. It really hurts. It's another salt in that wound. That the Texans just are running circles around the Browns right now. They're just getting win after win, which really, really sucks. But I think once Quinshon Judkins does get into that system and does get a few more rushes under his belt, I think that's going to be a really, really good thing to have, especially with Dylan Sampson, which we'll actually get to later. Actually, no, we'll get to that later. Let's start with Dylan Gabriel. I was not a fan of this pick whatsoever. I think if you're going to take Shedeur Sanders, this would have been the spot to take him. Which, of course, the Browns did end up taking him 2 rounds later. But I think if they would have taken Shedeur Sanders, I don't think there would have been any. I think Dylan Gabriel probably is still there in the 5th round, and then you take Dylan Gabriel right there. I don't think anyone really has a problem with that. But the fact that Dylan Gabriel was taken not 1 but 2 rounds before Shedeur Sanders is a big reason why all of these people are now ganging up on Dylan Gabriel, and I think he's starting off behind, especially with morale of the fan base. I think everyone wants Shedeur Sanders to be the starting quarterback. I don't know if everyone wants Dylan Gabriel to be the starting quarterback, and we'll talk about the problems with Dylan Gabriel in a second. But then you take Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee. I don't know. I think Dylan Sampson can either be a really good running back or he can be, a Jerome Ford or a Pierre Strong type running back, and I don't think the Browns really need another one of those running backs. I don't think Dylan Sampson really can be an every down type back. I don't think he can be a number 1 back in the NFL. I think he's just a little too small. But this is a good place to pick him. 4th round. You're just kind of taking shots in the dark a little bit here. I think it's a really good idea, especially since we did not bring back Nick Chubb this year. I think the Browns just want to see what's out there right now, get a little bit younger in the running back room, and see what they have. And then, of course, you take Shedeur Sanders. We've already been kind of discussing this whole video. But you take Shedeur Sanders in the 5th round, and it's just, I think with that preseason game and how good Shedeur Sanders looked, it's only week 1 of the preseason game, I get that, but you got to admit that Shedeur Sanders looked really good. He, even in the post game, he sounded like a guy that the Browns want to have. He sounded like, hey, I know I didn't play my best. I know it may have looked really exciting to have a successful game with a quarterback again. But I just don't. He's very hard on himself, and I think that comes with Deion Sanders being his dad and him growing up in the spotlight and having the reality show and his brother follow around with the camera and all that kind of stuff, that he grew up in the public eye. I think that's definitely hardened him a little bit. We'll see how that goes. I think his physicals, the fact that he's a little bit shorter, also is a little bit of a problem. And one thing that I really, really did not like in that preseason game was the fact that he was running around and doing all the spins and twirls that he did. One game against the Steelers, that's going to be immediately scrapped. Like, he's not going to do that anymore, but I don't want it to really get to that point. I want him to kind of nip this in the bud and get that out of his habits. I know in the press conference he did say that he had the time of his life doing that. I don't really like hearing that. I think that it'll almost be kind of a thing to fall back on, but I just don't think starters, especially when you play in the AFC North with the elite defensive lines that you're going to play twice a year, every year, that I just don't think that's a recipe for success for Shedeur Sanders. So that's my only kind of one thing a little bit there. I think his throw power could use a little bit of work, but yeah, I just don't. It wasn't a perfect game by any means, but the fact that he did show a lot of promise is very, very good for the Browns. Dylan Gabriel, I think right now he needs to have a good game against Philadelphia, and if he doesn't, then I think Shedeur Sanders jumps over him, and I don't really think there's an argument for Dylan Gabriel to be ahead of Shedeur Sanders anymore, especially in the depth chart. And then because of Kenny Pickett not playing in the preseason, most likely he'll probably maybe play in like the last game and maybe get a possession or two. But I think the Browns kind of want to keep him a little bit guarded since he did have that injury. I don't think the Browns really want to go into the season with not just an injured quarterback right off the bat, especially with how injury prone the Browns have kind of been the past 2 years. All right, so that's going to probably be my rant for the video. Let's go through game by game and give you a winner and a loser. So week 1 against the Cincinnati Bengals, the Kentucky Bengals, as I like to call them, the fake Browns, part 1. I think the Browns get a win in Cleveland in week 1. And I know everyone's picking Cincinnati in this game, and it's the Browns. What are you talking about? This is the Bengals. The Bengals swept the Browns last year. Give me a second. I don't think we realize the fact that before this game, before last season, when the Browns were swept by the Bengals, Joe Burrow had 1 win against the Browns. 1. That's it. And it was in 2023, if I'm not mistaken, if not 1, it's 0, where, if I'm not mistaken, he played in 2023, and he lost and got him when the Browns were in the back or had backups in. Maybe that was was that the year he got injured. He might have been injured in that game, but regardless, it's either 1 win or 0 wins before 2023 when he got the 2 wins against Cleveland, and he's never. Except the 1 game last year, he's never won in Cleveland. And that was probably one of the worst games I've ever seen, especially because Deshaun Watson was being Deshaun Watson, the whole cheering him as he tore his Achilles, the whole Browns fans thing, and the players being mad at the fans, and then the fans being mad at the players, and that whole thing that happened for a week. That is literally Joe Burrow's only win in Cleveland. That's it. He's been in the league since 2020. It's going on 5 years, and he's got 2, maybe 3 wins. That's it. And he plays the Browns twice a year. So I don't want to hear this, oh, but Joe Burrow is Joe Burrow, and it's Jamar Chase. Like, no. Jamar Chase and Denzel Ward have been going at it twice a year since 2020, and Denzel Ward's won every single time. Denzel Ward had the pick 6 against Jamar Chase. Denzel Ward, after Jamar Chase called the Browns elves, Denzel Ward held Jamar Chase in check that entire game in week 1 of the 2023 season. So I think the Browns get a win against Cincinnati in week 1. I think it's a similar type of game than in 2023, where the Browns just kind of shut down the Bengals. And then they let the offense kind of get there. But I think the entire Cincinnati offense is just not going to have an answer for the Browns defense like they have been, except for that 1 week. And then you go to Baltimore to face the fake Browns part 2. On On my birthday, by the way, which is great for me, and the Browns, no one really expects this. The Browns are going to lose. They're going to get blown out. I know it's Joe Flacco. If Joe Flacco does get the start, it's probably going to be his return to Baltimore. I think he throws a couple of picks, maybe a pick six, maybe a fumble. I think the Ravens do smother Joe Flacco in his return to Baltimore. And it's not going to happen. The Browns are going to lose in week 2 against Baltimore, which is probably one of the more complete teams in the NFL right now. Still doesn't erase the fact that the Ravens are essentially the Browns. No matter what Baltimore fans want to say, the Browns, if it wasn't for the Browns, the Ravens would not exist. Baltimore would probably not have a football team. So you're welcome. The next time you want to talk trash about the Browns, just remember that we are the reason why you have a football team. So, anyways, week 3, you come back home against the Packers. I think you lose there. I think this is a game that probably Joe Flacco gives it away. I just don't see. I know it's Jordan Love and the whole. I just think the Packers are just a little bit better offensively and just can hold their water at a point of attack just for that little extra half a second. Maybe it's like the 2021 Christmas game with Baker Mayfield, how the Browns kind of held in there a little bit, but the Packers just kind of pull away right at the end. But yeah, I just think that this is a game where the Browns just kind of are in it for the little bit, but I think in the fourth quarter, the Packers pull away. Then you go on the road against the Lions. Do we really need to talk about this? The Lions destroy the Browns here. Joe Flacco probably throws like 3 or 4 picks, maybe 2 pick sixes. Yeah, it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad. And it sucks for me because Aiden Hutchinson is someone I absolutely despise, especially since the 2021 in Michigan Ohio State game where he manifested a win and he talked about the Ohio State being disrespectful even though it's a rivalry game, and then eventually it comes out that Michigan was caught cheating. But anyways, Browns absolutely get destroyed in Detroit. Then you come home and you play the Vikings. Or no, it's not even at home. It's in London. I forgot about that. This is in London against the Vikings. The Vikings, of course, expected to be one of the top teams in the NFL. Strange things do happen in London. I'm giving the Browns a win here just because it's multiple time zones away. It's going to be early in the morning here, at least. It's going to be early in the morning, which will be fun for me to do a post game or a halftime and post game reactions to this. But anyways, I just think weird things happen. It's going to be a defensive battle. I think the Vikings, just their offense, especially with J.J. McCarthy, I think him having this is his rookie year because he went down with that injury last year. I think Myles Garrett has a Myles Garrett type game. Maybe the Browns get a few turnovers off of J.J. McCarthy. Maybe this is the game where Joe Flacco has his 4-touchdown game and 300-yard game like he had against New York in that night game to clinch the playoff spot in 2023. But, yeah, I'm giving the Browns a win here before you go on the road to play Pittsburgh, or Schittsburg, as I like to call them. I think the Browns have to win in Pittsburgh in order for me to actually predict it the next year. Just because the Browns are just horrible in Pittsburgh, exempting the 2020 playoff game, I can't predict the Browns to win in Pittsburgh ever until they eventually do it. I just don't think the Browns really have a good chance. I think the Steelers are going to, have a Steelers type game where they basically get dominated the entire game but hang around, and then they get a game-winning field goal or get a touchdown late in the fourth quarter and, do a Steelers things, and then all the Steelers fans come up, oh, we dominated you, you suck, you're the Browns, you can never beat us, yeah. Whatever. Anyways, we're going to go to the Miami Dolphins game, and I'm going to give Cleveland the win against the Miami Dolphins. I think Tua is kind of having already one foot out the door. Same with Tyreek Hill. I think Tyreek Hill requesting a trade also kind of hurts the Dolphins' morale. I think the Browns, especially with it being in Cleveland, I know last year the Dolphins came into Cleveland when it was cold and all that kind of stuff, and actually won against the Browns. But I just think that this year, with the Browns actually kind of being in the game instead of it being one of the last few weeks of the season where everyone knows the season's over, I think the Browns still fight in this game. And then maybe you get another Joe Flacco type game. And you win, and you have the high of Joe Flacco. But the next week when you play New England, yet again, like the Steelers, and it's in New England again, like the Steelers in Pittsburgh, I'm not predicting the Browns to beat the Patriots until I see it happen. I think this is a game where Joe Flacco actually gets benched. Maybe not in the middle of the game, but coming off the bye week, I think this is the perfect time where Flacco takes the seat and maybe has one of the rookies come in, or even Kenny Pickett to come in if he's still on the team at the end of training camp. Because if he's not, just scrap whatever I just said, and then we're obviously gonna put the rookies in. But yeah, I just don't think the Browns. I think the Browns just can't beat New England, no matter how bad New England is. Bailey Zappi came into Cleveland and absolutely destroyed the Browns that one year. But I just think this is a perfect spot for Joe Flacco. He's probably going to get tired. I don't really see him having a full year this year. I just think that this is a perfect opportunity for the Browns to just kind of see where you're at. You have enough losses on the year where you're probably not going to make a playoff run. But yeah, I think the Browns drop this game in New England. Maybe it's a close contest. Maybe it's not. But I definitely think that this is the time where Joe Flacco takes the seat. He gets tired. He has maybe a game like he did last time against Houston in the playoffs where he's just kind of worn out. His arm's not like it was in week 1. And then you come off your bye week with maybe Shedeur Sanders or Dylan Gabriel. One of them starting. Maybe it's still Dylan Gabriel if the Browns are still stubborn enough to put Dylan Gabriel. Let's put Dylan Gabriel in just because the Browns right now have the depth chart as Dylan Gabriel ahead of Shedeur Sanders. So let's put Dylan Gabriel in. And I just don't think I'm going to give the win to the Jets. I just don't think Dylan Gabriel's really a good quarterback. If you've seen the clips when the offensive and defensive lines are blocking and you see Dylan Gabriel, he virtually just disappears into the offensive line and defensive lines. Like he's 5'11". I'm taller than Dylan Gabriel. And I'm not playing football, let alone quarterback in the NFL. So it's not going to be a good thing. I think Dylan Gabriel struggles in this game. Maybe you put Joe Flacco back in, but he's not really much better after he getting benched. And I think you lose against the Jets. And then you come and you play the Ravens. I think it's kind of a similar thing. Dylan Gabriel maybe gets the start again, or maybe it's Joe Flacco again. I just think the Ravens are just the better team. Maybe you get a little bit of a start because the crowd's into it. But I think you lose to the Ravens, and the Ravens actually sweep the Browns this year instead of splitting. Then you play the Vegas Raiders. I just think this goes downhill really quickly. I think you lose yet again with the Patriots and New England, or in Pittsburgh in Schittsburg. I can't predict the Browns to beat the Raiders until I really see it happen. Like, yet again, the Browns have lost to the Raiders where they really shouldn't have lost to the Raiders, no matter if it's in Las Vegas or if it's in Cleveland. We just cannot seem to beat the Raiders. So I'm not going to predict that. I think the Browns lose to the Raiders, and I think this is where it really gets downhill. Then you play the San Francisco 49ers. Same thing here. I know the Browns beat the 49ers last year, or the last time they played in 2023 with Anthony Walker. And I just think the 49ers, I don't necessarily think they're an elite team. I just don't think that the Browns are better. So I'm going to give the Browns a loss against the 49ers, and this is really where the Browns start preparing for the future. Maybe you throw Dylan, or maybe you throwing Shedeur Sanders here in the second half if this is a blowout. And then you come off and maybe you play you play Shedeur Sanders. Then he in the second half he maybe makes it a little bit better, shows a little bit of promise. And then after this week, I think you put Shedeur Sanders in against the Titans, which would be really cool to see. Cam Ward versus Shedeur Sanders. I know that's what everyone wants. Maybe if Cam Ward still is there. I'm not a believer in Cam Ward right now. I think he's a good quarterback. I just didn't think he was number 1 overall quarterback worthy. He's not a Jalen Daniels. He's not a CJ Stroud. Like he's not a Joe Burrow. He's just not. He doesn't have the arm. I think he's another one of these college quarterbacks that thinks he can out-athlete everybody, but it's just not going to be like that. The gap between Lamar Jackson and a college player down here is not going to be the same as Lamar Jackson and the NFL player. Still better, but it's not nearly as much as it is, or as it was when Lamar Jackson was in college. I think this is kind of the same shell shock that he had, that Lamar Jackson kind of had a little bit. I know Lamar Jackson still did end up succeeding in the NFL and still is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I just don't think Cam Ward has the arm strength and the arm talent that Lamar Jackson does. I think he's not a great quarterback, and if he's still there in Tennessee at the moment, I think maybe this gets flexed into maybe a Thursday night game. Maybe you give the Browns one primetime, please. Please just give us one primetime game. I'm already dealing with the no night games with Fox and Ohio State. Let's just get one primetime game in Cleveland. Please. Come on, NFL. Just do one. So I think the Browns actually start Shedeur Sanders in this game. You get the win against the Titans. And then it kind of goes a little bit. You get a little bit momentum. But then you go to Chicago. I know the Chicago Bears. The Bears still suck, that whole song thing. I think the Bears actually get a win against the Browns. I think they're a lot more improved than people are expecting them to be. It's just not going to be the same Bears, Bears choke. The Browns are somehow escape with the win. I think the Bears are actually the ones to escape with the win in Chicago. Kind of takes the wind out of the Browns' sails before the Bills game. The same thing, like I said, with the Ravens. Bills are one of the best teams in the AFC right now. I think they handle the Browns no problem, even if it's in Cleveland. Then you come on the road, or you stay home. This is your last home game against Pittsburgh. They come into Cleveland. I don't even remember the last time Pittsburgh actually won in Cleveland. I think it might have been 2022, maybe. Maybe 2021, the last time they won in Cleveland. It's been a little bit. It's been a long time. And I think that stays. I think Cleveland has one of those games against their AFC North opponents where you see the flashes of the Cleveland Browns. But I think the Browns actually get their win against the Steelers. And honestly, this is going to be kind of praying that I actually do have a win against the Steelers this year, and that Pittsburgh and the Ravens don't sweep both of their games against the Browns. And then you come on the road, the last game of the year, which is kind of interesting that the Bengals are the first and last games of the year for the Browns. But anyways, I think the Bengals are kind of surviving for a playoff spot. They're treading water a little bit. I think they beat the Browns in Cincinnati. Joe Burrow plays this game. Maybe the Browns rest their starters for next year. Maybe you have a little bit of injuries. Maybe Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel kind of split a little bit here. Maybe you bring up Kenny Pickett if he's still a free agent or if he's still in the practice squad. Who knows? But I still think, regardless, that the Bengals take advantage and they have a Jamar Chase actually breaks through Denzel Ward and has a game, and maybe the Bengals even blow out the Browns. But that is my predictions. I have the Browns going 5-12. That will probably warrant a early first-round pick, depending on what the Jaguars do. That might we might get a top 5 pick, and that turns into maybe a quarterback. Which I think the Browns really in the back of their minds are really hoping for. I don't really see Shedeur Sanders or Dylan Gabriel being a franchise guy. Maybe Shedeur Sanders can be like what Baker Mayfield was, but Baker Mayfield is not a franchise quarterback. I know he's the best quarterback we've had since coming back, but that's not really a high bar to clear. I think maybe you get someone like Cade Klubnik or Lenore Sellers coming out of college. That's just my personal preference, but we still got to see how they perform in college this year. So maybe we get that, maybe we don't. We'll see. But that is my predictions. The Browns go 5-12 with wins over the Bengals and the Steelers. They lose both games against the Ravens. But that will be it. Thank you for staying this long if you have. Make sure to stay tuned for my Ohio State prediction. Yeah. Make sure you like and subscribe, share if I look ridiculous to your friends. And if I do look ridiculous, yeah, guess what? You're the one that's going to be making me money if you share this around with people. So remember that. Thank you all for watching. Go Dogs.